So illness and disability make up parts of you, whoever you might be. They're part of your authentic self, part of your authentic experience. And a lot of the time, say with a 9-to-5 job, you're expected to cut off that part of yourself and fight against it. So I can't work a normal 9-to-5 job because of my illnesses. So I work a gig work as a delivery driver. And I make plenty of money, and it's a lot of fun, and it completely accounts for my illnesses. So that means that I can be my authentic self, go straight from just lying in bed to going out working, and I'm still me. And that's fine. But there's a lot of stigma that's attached to just existing as you are. So if you go to work and say, I can't work today because I'm having a terrible depression day, then the overall message I've always felt is that you're worthless, and that why would the company hire you because of this? You're weak and you're less powerful because of this. And thinking about when this applies to games, you say, I want to play this game on easy, for example. This is a massive thing, a massive trope. People who play games on easy are losers and weak and pathetic. And so, yeah, and but you can have a lot more fun, and some people just don't like games, and it's just about your experience, about your authentic experience. So people will tell you, oh, you're a loser if you play on easy, or you go, well, authentically me, I feel like playing on easy and I enjoy it so much more, so fuck you. Fuck you and your standards.
This argument, I argue about this of RimWorld a lot. Because my partner always plays RimWorld on one of the much higher difficulties, because he's like, well, no, but you've got to make progress. You've got to progress. And I'm like, I like playing it on Builder. I like Build It. That's what I like out of RimWorld. That's what I get, is that I'm making a whole little community that works. So yeah, completely recognise that.
It's such an interesting discussion. I remember, I think it came up like a year or two ago. One of my favourite gaming channels on YouTube, Funhouse, had a whole podcast on that very issue, about whether playing on easy makes you less of a gamer because you're playing on easy. But if it's an option in the game, like, it's an option in the game at the end of the day. So it's designed for all different people to play however they like. And that's the beauty of games, is that you can play them however you like. So you shouldn't be judged for playing it how you want.
Yeah, and there's always so much shame in taking the easier route.
Yeah.
You should try to do it as hard as possible. Jem, you mentioned in the WhatsApp earlier about talking to your husband, who said he was deaf in one ear.
Yeah.
So thinking about, I found this quote from a man called Josh Straub, who's an accessibility consultant who works in the gaming industry, and he says that there are 4 areas of accessibility. It's fine motor, auditory, low vision, and color blindness. So, and saying how it's about fixing things on a granular, it's not about fixing things on a granular scale, it's about addressing the bigger issue. So, you said you haven't had much personal experience, but did he share anything about you of his experience with gaming and his issues?
Yeah, I mean, for him, it means that stereo sound doesn't work. So if you're playing, I mean, I played a game years ago that was just profoundly a profound experience for me, called Thief, and they did sequels which weren't as good, but the first one was amazing, and most of the game was creeping around, and you had to listen out for guards and things that you were doing, and the whole game was actually not about killing as much as you could. It was about avoiding getting into combat, but it was done by directional sound. And I was speaking to my husband about it earlier, and I was saying, he was like, well, I wouldn't have been able to play a game like that. He has a special mixer on his headphones so that it puts the sound all through one ear. But it's really difficult to get this kind of stuff, actually. And given how many people, I mean, there's a huge amount of people that suffer from this either hear it full loss or partial loss in one ear. So for there to be so little support for it is quite shocking, actually. I looked into it for him because I was going to get him this. I bought him this mixer because I was like, you have to experience games. But he said, well, okay, you know, this is who I am, this is how I am. He was born this way, so you know, it's all he's known. So his view was like, there are just some games I can't play. There are just some games, and you know, Thief would have been one of them. There are just some games that I can't play, and he's okay with that, because there are lots of games that he can play, and there are other games that are not massively affected by this issue. And so he doesn't view it as a disability or a problem. I mean, he just views it as that's who he is, like we said. So that's it. So he just accepts that there are some things that he can't do, and that's all right, because there's lots of other things that he can do. And for the most part, the games, there is a solution for it. You can get these mixers, and so, but you know, I really wanted to get surround sound for the TV, but there's just no point really, because he's the one that's more fussy. I mean, he's incredibly fussy about what he listens to and how and what the sound level is and everything. So, you know, I think it did sort of open my eyes to the fact that, you know, sometimes there are just some things that, but I think that's the case for all of us. I don't think it necessarily is about ability or disability. I think there are just some things, like I really want to play VR games, but I have quite severe motion sickness, so I really struggle with that. And I think it's something I was so excited to do. And I'm okay as long as I'm just sitting still and I don't move around anywhere. But I can't play, you know, anything that involves running around for more than about 5 seconds. So
I think you're right there about the options, because I think, Mac, just what you were saying there about it's not granular, it's like a whole thing. It's when there is a game that does not have this. I mean, basically, when we load up a game, especially if you're a PC gamer, the first thing you do is you go to the settings menu. And you have to spend at least half an hour on the visual settings, the audio settings, the control settings. And the control settings, and as you say, the audio and visual settings, are where a huge amount of changes can be made to adapt for anybody, whoever they are, whatever it is, issues that you have. I always have subtitles on everything. I have subtitles on TV. I have no hearing problems, but I find it improves my concentration and it improves my comprehension. So I always have subtitles on. So games where that's not an option, instantly out, or games where I have to wait until the first cutscene is finished or skip it, because that also drives me nuts. But, you know, other little things, when you were saying about the motion sickness, I actually have that quite often. If I haven't played Rust or 7 Days or any of those first-person games for a long time, when I go back in, feel very sick. And things like anti-aliasing settings, and sort of there's lots of things you can do in the display settings that actually, with your field of view and all other things, that can make it work for you. And that's me as somebody without disability. I can imagine that, you know, there are many adaptations that can be made to games, and all it needs is to be a standard across. I've even had a game once where you couldn't switch between the invert y-axis.
Oh yeah.
What kind of madman, you know, that's one of the defining arguments, is whether you play with an inverted control system or not. And yet there's this game where you couldn't change it. I was like, how will we cope? It was fine for Oscar because he plays the opposite way to me.
You just made me think about how